And hello, my dear friends, operator Starsky here with a short update on the news and everything related to Ukraine, because as always, we will have such small reviews time to time. Yes, I usually do them in the morning, but today I slept through the morning alarm because I was working until very late on a separate things. But I'm really happy to see you here, my friends. Hello, chat. Hello, everyone. Hello, Matt. Hello, Newman. And it wasn't me. And everyone else. It's very, very nice to see you, my friends. So I solved the issue that I had the previous time, and we will be having different videos with the sound this time. And traditionally, let's start with some of the recent updates from Ukraine, because unfortunately tonight we had another strike, and this one was kind of severe in several regions of Ukraine. Hello, food order. So let's check it out. Let's see if it even works, because I didn't check much. Yes, it kind of does. So as usual, we will have, hello Matias. As usual, we will have a review, hello Larry as well, a review partially of the Western media, but also primarily related to the media in Ukrainian and also Russian language, because not a lot of our viewers, for obvious reasons, understand or read media in Ukrainian and Russian languages. And this is why I'm here, my friends. Hello, Stefan, and hello, Totally Insane. We're like, on the same page here. So what do we have? First of all, today we had yesterday we had some severe strike on Ukrainian power producing facility, and actually Russians showed in their media the strike that took place in Kyiv Oblast, and they were showing, it's not Kyiv Oblast, it's Chernihiv Oblast, Slavutich. The strike that shows several drones, at least 8 Russian drones, hitting a power-producing facility near Slavutich, which resulted actually in many Ukrainian households losing electricity. And what you see on your screen is basically Russians bragging, showing off, striking civilian power facility in Ukraine. Like, it's absolutely obvious that they are targeting those facilities on the brink of winter, because the winter is coming. Russians traditionally will be striking Ukrainian power and heat generation facilities to try to make Ukrainian people freeze. It will not be their first attempt. They're trying really, really hard since 2022, dreaming of Ukrainian people freezing and suffering. But as we all know, Russians fail big time. However, they keep striking those facilities. You can see that Russians hit the Slavutich station. Those are explosions. There are reports coming that we kind of have some issues these days in defending specifically Chernihiv Oblast of Ukraine, which is basically the northmost part of Ukraine, right? So it's on the border with Belarus. And one of the reasons that I can see is that unfortunately we're running out of the missiles for defending this region, the anti-air missiles, most probably, but that's just based on the reports coming from different, I would say, military sources as well. And the reason for that is obviously Russia produces a lot of drones. Ukraine needs more air defenses to deal with those drones. We already have several promises, right, coming from Germany, coming from Israel as well regarding the Patriot systems. And we already have, according to the most recent information, we already have those systems, at least one of those systems deployed in Ukraine. So Orban, in his social media, accused Brussels in attempting to start the war. He says that the situation is serious. On the table, we have completely war-mongering propositions. They want to give Ukraine the money of the EU. They want to accelerate Ukraine's access to the EU using different law tricks. They want to finance the weapon delivery, all those propositions. According to Orban, who, by the way, goes to Kremlin, like he works there. So he says that all those propositions are showing that Brussels wants to start the war, and he says that I will keep standing and defending positions of Hungary, but this summit also shows that next month will be dedicated to the threat of war. He says, we will need the support of all of our political community and every Hungarian who wants peace. So one thing I really don't understand here is, how Orban managed to show Ukraine, the country that was illegally invaded by Russia and supported by basically all the civilized world, all the democratic countries, how he managed to show Ukraine as actually the reason of the Russian invasion, how he manages to show Ukraine as an enemy of Hungary for reasons that, again, I absolutely don't understand and I have no idea. Because generally speaking, if we scroll back a bit to 1940s and check out on which side Hungary actually fought, we will be kind of surprised, right? But at this point, he's playing absolutely and dancing to Putin's flute. And he recently accused Zelensky of harassing Hungary. And he admitted that the drones that were incurring Western Ukrainian airspace were actually Hungarian. He said that Ukraine is not an independent, not a sovereign country. And that is why it doesn't matter if those drones were Hungarian or not. So Orban himself basically made Hungary also dependent on the Russian resources, and instead of switching to the resources that all European countries are now using, I'm talking about the oil and other resources, he keeps sucking Russian pipe, all right? And at the same time, his position is actually very dangerous for all the Hungarians. So he also said that Hungary is not gonna be part of any organizations that Ukraine is part of, which Ukrainian external minister Sybiga also said that, dude, actually Hungary is part of United Nations, part of many other organizations that Ukraine is part of. So but one thing that looks absolutely disturbing here is the way he's trying to sow discord in Europe. First of all, sow discord between Hungary and Ukraine, openly calling Hungarians to basically hate Ukraine. And this is something very disturbing and alarming in my personal opinion, because in Europe, among civilized countries, you don't say shit like, I don't want our country to be part of any organizations with France or Italy, you don't say that because it makes you look like a fucking jackass, right? But we all understand why he's doing that, because he is on the wrong side of the barricades at this point. Let's check the other one. So yeah, Donald Tusk from Poland also commented on this. He says, Viktor Orban says that there is no war. At this point, I think that there is a war, and the real question is not if there's a war or there's no war. The real question is where you are in this war, and we understand where Poland is, on which side. We understand on which side NATO and Europe, and apparently we also understand which side is taken by Viktor Orban, he said. Donald Tusk and generally Polish people, guys, I am so proud that we are friends, that we can have this absolutely civilized dialogue between countries. This is something we all lack very, very much today. For example, between countries like Hungary and the rest of the European countries. Totally insane, says Orban needs a complete ban. I absolutely agree on that. We should not ban Hungary, but we should do something with Orban. And again, unfortunately, the way he acts and his political agenda is very, very dangerous and damaging for the Hungarian people. It's 100%. Hello, Murray Duncan. Very, very good to see you here. So we already have the update from the Ukrainian Air Force. Again, it was published a couple hours ago while I was peacefully sleeping. And they say that Russia launched 86 aerial threats, and the Ukrainian Air Force managed to intercept or suppress 53 of them. So they were primarily Shaheds, Gerbera, and other types of drones used primarily in the north, south, and east of Ukraine. And unfortunately, in 6 locations, we have recorded 31 impacts of the Russian drones. This one is pretty interesting, by the way. I saw this video just this morning. So basically, you can see a Russian orc, okay, who snatched. They're right there in the crosshair of this video camera. You can see a woman, a local woman, and that orc basically snatched her food, her provision, and he wanted to deliver this food to his positions because, again, Russians are occupiers. They are not welcomed in Ukraine and nobody wants them there. And basically they are snatching food from the local people, and he snatched the food from this lady and attempted to run away, but he was spotted by Ukrainian drone, and he led Ukrainian drone directly to his position of his troops. All right, and eventually those positions were hit. Karma found them, as it always happens. Poland reports that Russia prepared terrorist attacks in Poland, Lithuania, and Germany using drones and corn tin cans stuffed with explosives, according to Gazeta Wyborcza of Poland. So in Lithuania, the law enforcement officers found explosives that were hidden at a cemetery, and in Poland they found a Russian spy that delivered those tin cans stuffed with explosives, also parts for the Russian UAVs and SIM cards to be able to control those drones. Basically, there is ISIS, there is Russia, and you can put equality symbol between them. This one is kind of like, it's so funny because recently Trump, while bragging about his achievements, his peace achievements, he said that he managed to establish a peace deal between Albania and Azerbaijan. And basically during the recent meeting, President Macron was having this like conversation with Ilham Aliyev from Azerbaijan. And then he was approached by Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of Albania, who actually said, like, you have to apologize because you didn't congratulate our countries for this amazing peace deal, for, you know, we finally stopped fighting each other due to the amazing contribution of Donald Trump. And basically you can hear what they say in this video. It's so beautiful. Let me make it possible for. Sorry for the low sound, but it's just the way the record is. All right.
You should make an apology to us, because you didn't congratulate us for the peace deal that President Trump made between Albania and Azerbaijan.
I'm sorry for that, guys.
Yeah. So, and you worked very hard. You worked very hard. We had 500. You should make.
I think it was cool. You didn't congratulate us with the peace deal that the Trump helped to establish between Albania and Azerbaijan. It's like, you know, those geographical mishaps are actually very, very fun. You know, it's like, for example, imagine you're like a mayor of Denver, all right? A mayor of Denver, you're sitting in your office, you're like drinking coffee, relaxing, having a good time. Then all of a sudden the door opens in your office and Steve Witkoff walks in. And you're like, Mr. Witkoff, what the fuck are you doing here? And Witkoff goes, well, I came here, I brought 8 nuclear submarines with me. I brought an aircraft carrier to help you fight the threat of the Russian UAVs. You're like, first of all, what kind of navy if we're like in Colorado? Because like doesn't matter. Then like, what kind of UAV threat are you talking about? And Witkoff like, UAV threat in Denver. You're like, Denmark. Newman, are Albania and Azerbaijan at war? Yeah, apparently they are. They were, but not anymore, thanks to Trump. Yeah, but yeah, it happens. It happens. So, interesting report is coming from Russian Bashkortostan, the town of Birsk. So here we have a photo of Russian memorial dedicated to war in Afghanistan and war in Chechnya. So it's very interesting that 3 citizens of Afghanistan war died. So their names are there on the memorial. 4 citizens of Chechen wars, of both Chechen wars, coming from this town of Birsk, also died during the Chechen wars. And 188 citizens of Birsk died in Ukraine. When Russians are telling you that 87 or like 97% of Russia's citizens returned peacefully and safely from the special military operation, basically this is the truth. And later we will see the dynamics of Russian losses, because in September this year they published the largest amount of obituaries in the social media, in the newspapers, and you will see that there are thousands, almost 10,000 obituaries. But that's a great example of how Russian lies work. When, I don't know, when Douglas McGregor explains that Ukraine, like millions of Ukrainians are literally being exterminated every single day by brave Russian troops who don't lose even a single soldier, that's the thing. The war in Afghanistan, as long as I remember myself, was always remembered as something freaking terrifying. The war in Chechnya as well, like Russians dedicated plenty of their movies, documentaries to the wars in Chechnya because those were bloody. Russians were losing whole brigades to comparably smaller Chechen troops. But at the same time, on the Far East relatively Far East, in Bashkortostan, they have a war memorial where for years, for basically decades, they had 3 names of local citizens who died in Afghanistan in the 80s, 4 citizens who died in both Chechen wars, and now those names are reinforced by almost 200 citizens of this town who died in Ukraine. How do you like that? And I think they gotta show more of that in their social media, in their news reports, but of course we know that it's not the case with the Russian terrorists. Another interesting update is coming from Russia. Remember I told you that all sorts of, for example, Russian school groups, all those chats of parents and their classes at school and stuff like that, all sorts of those communities, they now have to use Russian messenger called Max, and this messenger is basically a gateway to for FSB, right? So basically all the data collected by this messenger about its users is going straight to FSB. So, for example, if in your school chat you're saying, why the hell is our school falling apart, right? Where is the financing from the government? So basically they can send a bunch of guys wearing suits to you late in the evening, and they will basically take you to the war in Ukraine. So this messenger is blocking people who turn off the function that collects their private information in this chat. So, like, if you don't want this chat, this messenger to collect your private information, you can tick the checkbox, and then you will get blocked in this messenger because you cannot use it without sharing your private information. That, of course, violates all sorts of rights and freedoms. But anyways, another interesting news coming from the terror Russian Empire is that in Russia, all the operations involving the bank cards will now be taxed. All right. Taxes will be introduced because Russia needs to finance its war against Ukraine. Again, at this very moment, there is absolutely nothing more important. Hello, granddad guitar. There is absolutely nothing more important for the Russian terrorists than basically fighting and killing Ukrainians, fighting against the rest of the civilized world. And Putin already announced that the VAT will be increased in Russia by approximately 2%, which means that all of the products in the supermarkets will become a bit more expensive for the Russian citizens. And also, this new tax was introduced in the Russian Gosduma because war will not pay for itself, right? So here we also have a small update as of today, 11 p.m. Berlin, which is like 2 hours ago. So it's a report on the amount of drones that were launched against Ukraine that we mentioned earlier. 86 Russian drones were launched against Ukrainian cities. Also tonight, Russia hit Ukrainian railway in Odessa. We have reported about 2 people being injured. And also in Bucha, where Russian drone attack took place as well, there was a fire in the sanatorium. 980 Russian invaders became good on the Ukrainian soil. Some of them apparently turned into a fertilizer for Ukrainian tomatoes, and the rest were improved. So basically they lost several limbs or things like that. It's also reported that the United States will provide Ukraine with the intelligence data for the long-range strikes on the Russian energy infrastructure, because if Russia strikes Ukrainian power plants and power producing facilities, producing facilities for years, then I think that on the fourth year of war, apparently it's time to freaking do the same to the Russian terrorists, eye for an eye, right? And also, this was reported by the Wall Street Journal, referring to different sources in the American government. And also, allegedly, such decision was recently approved by President Donald Trump. So in France, this one, by the way, is really cool. In France, French forces captured a tanker belonging to the shadow fleet of the terrorist federation that is suspected to be involved in launching drones over Denmark. The Le Parisien, I think this is how you pronounce it in France. This newspaper says that the tanker Pushpa that arrived to the coast of France around Monday was captured, and there is a suspicion that it was involved in the recent drone incursions over Denmark over the past days. And here we also have a photo of French soldiers that are now boarding this ship. We also have a footage, like, I don't know what kind of branch is that. Maybe GIGN, because they are trained in such operations as capturing or infiltrating and capturing the ships. I can be wrong. I am not really an expert in French armed forces, but let me know if you know anything about it, all right? Raceback, I was told there would be coffee. There would be coffee, my friend, I swear. Next morning, because hello, Ehud Katz, Olve Starsky, hi from Israel. Hello, my friend. I hope that you're doing well. We had coffee. I had coffee. I also have a small substitution for the coffee. Please stay with me for a while, okay? I have something else. Just a second. Because, sometimes coffee is just not enough. And you have to drink some kind of stronger poison, all right? So yeah, this is what I'm drinking these days as well, because I work until late, and unfortunately I have to keep my head in one piece in the morning. So cheers, guys. If you drink coffee, please drink coffee. It's much healthier than this one. Oh my God, it's good. All right. Let's continue with our news updates. Basically, guys, this is majority of the news that we read in Ukraine because in your media, for obvious reasons, there's updates dedicated or related only to your area or to Europe generally. And of course, you don't receive as many Ukrainian news in your media as we do, right? Brano says Red Bull has less caffeine than coffee. Yeah, I agree on that. It contains a lot more poison than coffee. I'm not sure about the caffeine. I think a lot of different chemicals as well. Frog says I use those double hard energy plus things. Yeah, that's a good idea. Murray, just add vodka after the victory, my friend. After the victory, I will remove Red Bull and add literally just vodka, nothing else. President Zelensky of Ukraine confirmed that he talked to Trump regarding the possibility to provide Ukraine with the missile systems of the long range. Apparently, he was talking about the Tomahawks, and he said that according to Ukrainian president, there is no decision about this as of today. As I said, please, guys, don't rush with your conclusions. Let's wait until we physically have something from the United States, something long range like Tomahawks, and then we will talk. Because generally, let's wait until we have something. How to say it? My God. Useful, okay, from the Donald Trump's administration, because since January I really want to see any, incredible results of cooperation of Donald Trump's administration, solving peace and things like that. I would just applaud. And if Donald Trump helps Ukraine win the war, return our territories, punish Russian war criminals, or even call them war criminals for what they do, I will be the very first Ukrainian to wear red hats. I fucking swear, you can literally quote me on that. But the fact is, we don't see many of that happening as of today at all. He's not even calling them for what they do, for being terrorists and criminal scum. According to Interfax Ukraine, so all the leaders of European Union except one, and you must probably understand which country I'm talking about, support Ukraine's process of entering Ukraine in the EU. Again, apparently you understand which exactly EU member is opposing this. You can see him on this photo on the right, okay? On the left, there is Ukrainian Minister of External Affairs. And we have another update coming from Germany. So in Germany, another case of mass drone incursion has been recorded. The drones were seen flying near the university clinics, near the electronics power plant, near the building of the local government, and even not far from the oil refinery that delivers the fuel to the airport of Hamburg. That is the new case, okay? And again, it's extremely disturbing because we can see such cases just literally taking place every day in Europe these days. British Princess Anna secretly went to Ukraine. She secretly visited Ukraine. According to Ukrainian media, she went to Kyiv. It was in complete secrecy, and nobody talked about it prior to this visit due to security reasons. And also, the news Sky says that this visit took place only 2 days after the Russian strike on Kyiv, when at least 4 Ukrainian civilians, including a 12-year-old girl and no less than 70 Ukrainian civilians were injured. So she visited also those sites, as we can see from the pictures. This one is really interesting. So this is a Russian person in Russia at the highway M12 Moscow-Kazan. She says that they have fuel stations each 150 kilometers, and this is on your screens. You can see this huge queue on the gas station. So the person who made this video so she says this is the highway Moscow-Kazan. She says we have one station each 150 kilometers, and on each station we have hundreds of cars, kilometers of cars waiting to be refueled. And she shows that giant queue of cars. I can tell that they're Russian because they have Russian license plates. And check out this stuff. Kilometers of queues of Russian cars expecting to get refueled. She says, I saw approximately 130 cars in front of our car. How exactly it happened that Russia, being some of the biggest producers and suppliers of the world with fuel and oil and gas, is now unable to provide fuel and oil and gas for its own citizens. Again, probably a big mystery. But on the other hand, I remember Russian mustachio man Peskov, the Russian speaker Peskov, who was saying that Ukraine doesn't have a magic weapon that would make Russia retreat or somehow significantly change the situation at the front line. Ukraine simply doesn't have those measures, and turns out that Ukraine actually does, because only in September we hit 18 out of Russian 38 fuel refineries, oil refineries, and basically you can see result now. Smoking is the problem, as Murray says. I completely agree with you, my friend. The croupier says, why aren't I seeing any Russian-built cars there? Well, for 2 reasons, my friend. Actually, 3 reasons, my friend. First of all, reason number 1 is that all the Russian-built cars are going straight to Russian widows, right? Second reason is that Russian-built cars are not really popular in Russia. And third reason is that you cannot produce much cars in Russia, because generally that new Moskvich that Russia is building right now, that you can see in different videos, is actually built on the chassis, on the platform of Ford, right? So it's basically like Ford with like new body and called Moskvich. That's what they officially do there. If you live in the United States, you will most probably be driving and be absolutely happy to drive something like Dodge, something like Jeep, for example, because those cars are good and reliable. If you live in Germany, you will be extremely happy to drive Mercedes or Volkswagen, right? For the same reasons. If you live in Russia, you will probably not choose to drive Russian cars because it means that you have a really bad taste or you have a really low income, and it's bad to show that you have a low income in Russia and you drive Russian cars. Putin drives yellow Lada Kalina, as far as I remember. But besides all that, of course, he also have plenty of other cars like Mercedes, armored Mercedes cars, and there's many of them. Guys, Putin is the richest dude in the world. Of course, he can afford himself all sorts of stuff, all right? Hello, Saba. Hello, good evening. Good day here in Germany. Generally, I aimed at streaming in the morning, but today I slept through the alarm, unfortunately. So, we have a bingo of Russian biggest oil refineries. Let me see if I can translate this one for you. Yeah, so in the top we have Omsky oil refinery, Kirishneftyorgsyntes, Ryazansky NPZ, Nizhgorodneftorgsyntes, Yaroslavneftorgsyntes. So in the top you can see like the biggest Russian oil refineries that were improved by Ukrainian drones recently, and the rest of the oil refineries on fire. Bashneft, Tuapsky, and Pazet, those were hit recently. Also, it's very interesting that near each Russian refinery you can see like the distance from Ukraine to this refinery. There's, for example, 2,500 kilometers in Omsk. Kirishneft, blah blah, 810 kilometers. Perm-Nefteorgsyntes, Russian oil refinery, still yet to be hit. It's almost 1,500 kilometers. Moscow oil refinery, 10.5 million tons, 475 kilometers, not bad. Bashkortostan, 10 million tons, 1,300 kilometers from Ukraine. I think it's so cool. And it's really interesting that, for example, the one on the left, the Volgograd Neftpererabotka, there you can see like a bunch of dates, right? It was hit multiple times in Volgograd, Oblast of the Terror Russian Federation, 500 kilometers from Ukraine. I wonder what is... Oh, you gotta like this one. So I'm trying to find the oil refinery that is the furthest from Ukraine. Okay, so we have, for example, Krasnoyarsky, Achinsky, and Pazet, 3,000 kilometers. Why is it? Yeah, 3,400 kilometers from Ukraine, still yet to be hit. But for example, where did I see this one? I just saw it like just a second ago. (900 kilometers, 900 kilometers. Oh, this one. So Usinsky oil refinery. Okay, let me put it like more or less on the screen. Let me know if you can see it. It's blocked by the... Oh, come on. Just a second. Anyways, so Usinsky oil refinery in the Komi Republic, located whooping 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine, and it was hit on 6th of August 2024, actually last year, more than a year ago. This is kind of interesting. Yeah, one thing I learned yesterday, actually. Newman says, make refinery fires great again. Yeah. There's on about 2,500 kilometers. Absolutely. What about the naval bingo card? Can we add another submarine yet? The Novorossiysk. I gotta check this one out though, because there's such a possibility. But I will tell you as soon as I know. However, yesterday I actually learned some sad news, because yesterday President Zelensky signed awards for 4 Ukrainians who died. You can see Andriy Parubi on the screen. He was assassinated on the bottom right. He was assassinated last month. We talked about it. And 4 Ukrainians in general yesterday were awarded a title of Hero of Ukraine post-mortem. So among them, unfortunately, I also found a picture of a person that I knew personally. On the left here, this young boy, this is, oh my God, this is Stepan Chubenko. 11 years ago, the Russian terrorists, we're talking about the Russian hybrid invasion, so this boy was shot by the Russian terrorists in the occupied Donbass territory for wearing a blue and yellow ribbon, right? Again, it was before the full-scale Russian invasion. And this one is Volodymyr Vakulenko on the right. So his story is he was killed by Russians in Izum, in the occupied Izum, while Izum was still under Russian occupation in 2022. I didn't know that, unfortunately, because back in the days when I had a football, yes, Duncan Stewart, soccer boy. He was a big fan of Ukrainian football, and he was killed for wearing basically a blue and yellow ribbon. Speaking of Volodymyr Vakulenko, I didn't know about his death because when I had a Facebook, I had something like 60,000 followers. I couldn't track all of them. I had plenty of friends. And Volodymyr Vakulenko, even though I never saw him personally, but we spoke a lot on the Facebook. And he was a children's writer. He was an author of books for kids, all right? He wasn't like an opinion maker, a leader, or political leader, or activist, or partisan, or officer, or like soldier, generally speaking. He was a Ukrainian writer, and he was writing books for kids. And this was precisely the reason why he was murdered by Russians during the occupation of Izum. So when Izum was occupied, he stayed there. Of course, Russians started filtering all the people under their occupation, as it always happens. And when they learned that Volodymyr Vakulenko actually was like a famous Ukrainian author writing books for kids, they basically shot him at point blank. We know the last names of the murderers, of course. The investigation was performed, and we know the names of his murderers. So he was killed for basically being a Ukrainian-speaking Ukrainian author writing books for kids. And only yesterday I learned about his death. And his death serves as an example of what you can expect if your country is occupied by Russia, what you can expect if Russian troops occupy your city. This is what you will encounter. Exactly that. You will encounter death, you will encounter repressions, you will be killed for speaking your native language, you will be killed for not agreeing, not accepting being annexed, being assimilated with the Russian terrorists. That is exactly what you will encounter. So that's for those who says that Ukraine should have peacefully gave up its territories, its people, and yada yada. You don't know what you're talking about. Russians will be eliminating your nation just for being yourself, just for not being Russian. They will be doing that. And the death of the person that I knew, that I respected, is a reminder of that. So we have another update coming, this time from the Russian media. They say that one day can destroy whole infrastructure. So Russians are actually kind of panicking these days because of the Ukrainian strikes on the Russian energy facilities. Again, President Zelensky said that it's eye for an eye now. You strike Ukrainian energy infrastructure, will be hitting yours, because why not? And Russians are now actually asking themselves a question, like, how severe is that if Ukraine starts striking Russian energy facilities? Again, the war is continuing for more than 3 years. There will be like 4 years soon, right? Russians only today started thinking what will actually happen if Ukraine starts striking Ukrainian energy infrastructure. This is so beautiful. This is just so you could understand that Russians didn't really care about this, because Ukrainians had much more important things than literally, trying to make Russians freeze in the winter. However, I think apparently in year 2025 it's kind of necessary, right? Considering the fact that Russians are trying to do the same with Ukrainians since 2022. So they have this a bunch of interviews on their television, and what they're writing in their media. Of course, don't forget that Russian media are the most reliable, the most honest media in the world, according to Tucker Carlson, according to Douglas McGregor and other imbeciles. But let's just read this one out. So they say that Kyiv openly claims that it will be hitting deep inside Russia to make sure that more and more Russian people are left without power and heating. So the horrible, the sad experience of Belgrade confirms that Ukraine is not lying. In the TV show «Мы в курсе», hell, how to translate this fucking shit to you, my dear friends, into from their language to human language. Мы в курсе. We are aware. We are aware, I think. The TV show We Are Aware learned how long will a typical Russian town last if the disaster will take place, if the disaster happens for real, and some of the local heating power stations will be destroyed. this is so beautiful to see, you know, how those fucking hamsters on the fourth year of war finally start thinking about this. They finally start asking questions. What happens if Ukraine strikes if Ukraine strikes Russian heating power stations for real? Actually, this might happen. We didn't know when we were celebrating the beginning of the special military operation in Ukraine. Of course, we didn't know it might happen because Russia is the strongest, Russia is mighty, Russia is the richest country in the world. We have the mightiest, the more experienced army. Ukraine has no weapons to strike Russia at all. We can strike them every single day with missiles, and they just cannot fight back. This is what makes this special military operation so beautiful and so cool. Year 2025, all of a sudden, they start asking themselves questions. What happens if Ukraine actually decides to strike one of our Russian regions, if it decides to strike a power producing facility in a typical Russian city? Who would expect that, right? Who would expect to see that, like back in 2022? Well, motherfuckers, this is what we call karma, actually, and we also call this the return of, not return of investment, but return of stupidity. Play stupid fucking games, win stupid fucking prizes. So, according to their expert, Stanislav Mitrachovich, Mazafakovich, the leading expert of the Russian Foundation for the National Energy Security in the Financial University, he says basically that one day of such strikes on the Russian power producing facilities can actually destroy the whole Russian infrastructure. One thing I completely don't agree with him, right? With this individual, is that you don't really need to destroy Russian infrastructure. It looks as if it was bombed in 1945, and since that time it was bombed every single day by Martians. Because when you take a look at some fucking Kolyma or some freaking Ussurisk, it looks like it's part of Donbass, but it's not. It's just Russia. This is just the way it looks like. This is what they are accustomed to. Like, fuck, let me just, I don't know, Kolyma, like literally. How do I type E? Like this? Ma. Let's just check, I don't know, like random messages of Kolyma. And Kolyma, by the way, is a region that has access, as far as I remember, to the sea. Tell me, my friends, if your city is located on the seashore, so it has access to like rich sea resources like fish, fucking lobsters, I don't know. Will it look like this? And this is basically a typical Russian city. I'm literally Googling for Kolyma, my friends. I'm not Googling for like, I don't know, Kolyma ruins. I'm literally looking for Kolyma. This is what I have in the search. Look at this, I don't know, amazing Russian. Why don't you want to? Why don't you want to? No, I don't want to open your website. Show me something interesting. Oh my God. Guys, this one is so beautiful. So I literally think that this should serve like, okay, fuck you. This should serve like a memorial to the Russian infrastructure in the fucking Kolyma and everywhere else. You see, like the ruins The beautiful mountains in the background, the horrible, ugly ruins where people apparently still live, and the cross saying, "Dear God, save and preserve Russia." I think this is, guys, just make a screenshot of that, all right? I think this is just absolutely amazing and beautiful. That's all you basically need to know about about Russian infrastructure. Okay. Here, welcome to beautiful Kolyma. Guys, especially, I don't know, like Scott Reed or Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, please go to Kolyma. People of the world want to have like more information coming from this place, all right? And that pink building over there, judging from what is written here, says that is basically restaurant Polarny, all right? Polar restaurant. Dear Tucker Carlson, why don't you go to the fucking Kolyma and make a report for us? If you're fighting for the truth, please do that, all right? People of the world will highly appreciate it. Make a report from the restaurant Polarny, please. You're talking a lot about great Russian cuisine, low Russian prices. I think you will not find lower prices in Russia than in the restaurant Polarny in the Russian Kolyma. Please do that for us, please. I beg you, fucking guys. Let's I don't know. Let's help Scott Reader, Tucker Carlson. Let's help Tucker Carlson with tickets to fucking Kolyma. Why not? I will fucking finance it myself. I'm not like sitting on a pile of money, but anyways, I'm ready to do that. I want to see him making a report, showing beautiful cuisine, beautiful dishes available in this amazing Russian restaurant. I really like to see that, not from like Moscow subway or like French supermarket Auchan in Moscow, but like in a real place, okay? In the real place. I would really like to see that. Yeah, Guardian Gypsy says, looks like it's already had a visit from Ukrainian drone. My friend, even before the Russian, even hybrid war started against Ukraine, all Russia, like primarily Russian cities already looked like that, as they were hit by Ukrainian drones in advance, like decades before that. So yeah. Prime Flag. Sadly, we cannot afford return tickets. Shh. Don't say that. That's the surprise. All right, because I didn't promise the return ticket myself. Anyways, so Russian infrastructure, it's already a meme. Basically, when you wanna laugh, just open Google and literally search one word, okay, Kolyma, and you can search it on the Google map to see like where it's located generally, because Kolyma actually has a lot of resources: forests, mountains, minerals, sea, and this is what the life looks like there. Oil refinery Sukhodolnaya in Rostov Oblast stopped its processes during the drone strike that took place overnight in the Rostov Oblast. It is reported that approximately 10 Ukrainian UAVs actually visited this Russian oil refinery, and apparently it's not functioning anymore. And this one is extremely interesting, my friends. This is what I was talking about earlier. So here we have Goryushka. Oh my god. Goryushka. How to explain this one? Like when a disaster happens, for example, like in your area, or God forbid in your family or something like that, you either go like, oh fuck, or you go like, oh bugger, you know, something like that. So in Russia they say горюшка, горюшка-то какое, you know, горюшка. So горе means a disaster, something like that, you know, a not a catastrophe, but basically a disaster, a deep human disaster. So Ukrainian project Gorushka. In September this year, Russia set a record of obituaries dedicated to the Russian invaders. All right. So here on the screen you can see the Russian obituaries since January 2024 until September 2025, until basically last month. All right. You can see that the number of those obituaries is growing. Let me open this one. Oh my God, how can I? Yeah. So you can see, and can I generally just like open you in the new tab? Is that even possible? Yes. Thank you so much. Let me also close this one. Yeah, so it's not bothering us anymore. Here you can see the, oh my God, the Russian obituaries since January 2024. They had approximately 2,800 obituaries published in their media, in their social media, blah, blah, blah. Last year, the biggest amount of obituaries was 6,520 that were officially recorded in the Russian social media. December 2024. But on the right, September 2025 is a record-setting month for Russia because 9,300 obituaries were posted in September alone, okay? And 7,000 obituaries were posted in August this year. So basically you can see the dynamics, probably not of the Russian losses, but generally the Russian reports. Maybe it was due to the exchange of the bodies that took place. I think it can be related. But if you count all those numbers, let's do that just for giggles, all right? Let's do that just for giggles. Let's use ChatGPT instead of calculator because it will be much, much faster. Okay. Almighty ChatGPT, blessed be your name. Please help me calculate the number of the Russian losses since January 2024 and until September 2025. Here I have a bunch of numbers. Please sum them up. 2,800 plus 3,444 plus 3,362 plus 3,384 plus 3,010 plus 3,370 plus 4,430 plus 4,290 plus 4,660 plus 5,320 plus 5,700 plus 6,520 plus 5,200 plus 5,380 plus 4,820 plus 4,000 plus 3,150 plus 4,450 plus 6,630 plus 7,100 and 9,320. Please let me know the results, and I'm also expecting your most sincere congratulations.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to give you that total and then shower you with congratulations. So let me just crunch those numbers real quick. All right, adding them all up, we get a total of 97,160. And there you have it. And of course, congratulations on getting through that big pile of numbers. I'm happy to be of service.
Thank you so much. Glory to Ukraine and all the decent people of the world supporting the right cause.
You're very welcome. And absolutely, glory to Ukraine and to everyone standing up for what's right. It's always good to have a moment to appreciate the people doing the right thing. If you need anything else, just let me know.
So we almost have 100,000 confirmed Russian deaths according to the Russian sources. And as Kanye Cat says, that's a lot of fertilizer. Absolutely. That's basically why Ukrainian soil is so fertile. Karen of Canada, please install it. All right, please install it. It's really good, and it's a bit more honest than Grok. However, Grok is also surprisingly honest sometimes. So we already have, and guys, that is just over the past 2 years. All right, it's 2024, 2025. We already have almost 100,000 confirmed Russian obituaries over the past 2 years in the Russian media. And one thing that I noticed, and I think that you probably noticed that as well, is that Russians tend to usually, like when they say that, for example, when in reality they, for example, hit 10 Ukrainian energy producing facilities, they say they hit 100, all right? If they hit, for example, I don't know, 2 air defense systems, they say that they hit 20. And it works vice versa. For example, if they lost 5,000 Russians, usually they say that they only lost like 500. So I notice that there is like this unofficial rule of 10. Okay, it works in Russia. You can observe it everywhere. It's like either divide or multiply by 10. Okay, so according to the most humble estimates, there's already more than 1 million Russian losses in dead and wounded. But at the same time, only in the past 2 years, we have almost 100,000 officially confirmed Russian obituaries, which is kind of interesting. I don't know, maybe there's a bit more than that in reality. How do you think? I think there's just a few Russians more, those that became better than they say. I think it's an obvious fact. Also, yesterday there was actually a critical situation at Chernobyl power plant, and the correct way to pronounce it is actually Chornobyl, not Chernobyl, because Chernobyl is the Russian way they call it, and Chornobyl is the way humans call it, all right? So yesterday there was a blackout at Chernobyl power plant due to the Russian strike, and the message that you can see in the middle of your screen basically comes from the Russian sources, where the motherfuckers are actually happy that they hit Chernobyl power plant. They say the most powerful strike of the Russian forces this year that took place in Ukraine, aiming Ukrainian energy grid. So this strike left the Chernobyl power plant, as well as Dniprovsk, Chernihiv and Sumy Oblast, without electricity. The Russians are happy for striking Chernobyl power plant and causing a blackout. Russians are celebrating striking Chernobyl power plant. Okay, technical fool, I'm far too English to pronounce Chernobyl either way. It's okay, my friend. My mission is to inform you, that's all. You can call it whatever. But the very fact is that the Russians are happy for striking Chernobyl power plant. You may ask, like, what kind of blackout at Chernobyl power plant are we talking about? Because, like, obviously, Chernobyl power station is detached from the power grid for like many years. Obviously, it's not being used and stuff like that. But the fact is, there is this object, this shelter, this radioactive sarcophagus, the big one, the second one, that was installed on top of the old one to prevent the radiation leaks and generally protect the everything that is contained inside. And this stuff is full of different sensors, different detectors, lighting equipment, all sorts of necessary electrical things and components that are absolutely vital to monitor all the processes that are taking place inside of the sarcophagus, so-called sarcophagus. And all of that equipment was eventually turned off because of the blackout caused by the Russian strike. Okay, so that's just like one of the dangers, one of the threats that makes Russians completely happy, actually. They are celebrating that they hit a power station that wasn't used, okay, because apparently Russians are so smart, so they don't even know the fact that Chernobyl power station is like not producing electricity anymore. They probably don't know this fact, as well as they didn't know the fact that the ground in Chernobyl is extremely radioactive and may cause your tiny Russian balls to shrink to the size of a fucking atom or grow like 500 more of them, and die from cancer if you like dig a trench in the radioactive Chernobyl ground, but they still did because they're Russians. So most probably they just didn't know about that. Most probably they don't know about the events that took place in Chernobyl because, guys, there's this very, very old stereotype that, like Americans don't know geography, right? Like Trump confused, like Albania and Armenia and stuff like that. Guys, Russians are worse, all right? Russians are worse. Russians dig fucking trenches in Chernobyl soil. And then Russians take those armored vehicles that were deployed in Chernobyl area that were actually stored in the caponiers, in the so-called caponiers, in the trenches in the magical Chernobyl soil. They take them back to Russia and show them on a parade. And they make Russian children crawl on top of that extremely radioactive Russian armored vehicles and take selfies because this is like the reality. That's just what you need to know about the level of their fucking IQ. All right? So apparently because they are just so fucking dumb, they don't understand what it means striking Chernobyl power plant, which was absolutely useless. Absolutely useless because Ukraine doesn't consume power from Chernobyl power plant. It's not working, guys. It doesn't work. It doesn't produce anything. You fucking occupied it in March 2022. Like, you should know better, right? That's one thing. And another thing, it's extremely fucking dangerous, not only for Ukraine, but also for Russia and also for Belarus, because in case of the radioactive leak, all that shit will go to your country. Generally, if you take a look at the jet streams, right, at the direction the air masses are moving around the Earth, okay, one thing you will discover all of a sudden is that generally at the highest altitudes, the wind blows from west to east. Okay, all the pilots know that. It varies, sometimes depending on the altitude, depending on the weather. But generally, when you fly westwards, you will spend much more fuel than flying eastwards, because when you fly westwards, you're flying against the majority of the winds. If you're flying westwards, they push you in the rear. They help you fly, so you spend less fuel. So generally speaking, if there is a radioactive leak, and generally whatever radioactive leak that happens or may happen in Ukraine, in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, in Chernobyl, anywhere, if Russians I don't know, like blow up a nuclear weapon, for example, somewhere like in Donbass or anything like that. So, in case anything like that happens, all that radioactive beauty will go straight to Russia eventually. It will, get smudged evenly between like Belarus, Russia, Vladivostok, all that shit. Again, not a lot of Russians actually think about this, because apparently their thinking processes are so degraded after years of consuming fucking window washers and vodka in big quantities. Let's check out the next one. The Ministry of Defense of the Netherlands showcased a picture of F-35 with an image of apparently Russian Gerbera on board of this airplane. Yay! That's nice. That's nice. As a Ukrainian, I can say that it's an achievement. French troops should be ready to the intense war already tonight, according to the Chief of the General Staff of the French Army. It's good that they talk about this. And remember, in the previous episode, we talked about Putin, who was playing with the pen, right? He had a briefing, and he was playing with the pen. And all the Russian media made those headlines that Putin unscrewed the pen during the briefing. Okay, he unscrewed the pen. Not I don't know, Kolyma is dying without heating. Okay, or kilometers of queues at the Russian gas stations. No. In the Russian media, that's not interesting. That's not necessary to talk about. Talk about Putin unscrewing pens during briefings, because you don't see that happening often, right? The level of Russian journalism is I fucking enjoy reading those headlines. So, and I remember in 2012, they were so snobbish and thinking that, they can teach Ukrainians journalism. My fucking ass. So, Putin unscrewed the pen that cost $600 while discussing increasing Russian pensions from $230 to about $250. Okay, and while talking about this, because that's the level of the minimal Russian pensions that Russian pensioners are receiving in Russia. When Tucker Carlson says that everything is so cheap in the Russian supermarkets, it's because, generally speaking, Russian pensioner receives fucking $200 a month. All right, so. And while speaking of that, he unscrewed the pen that actually cost $600. And Russian journalists actually, let's say proper journalists, they decided to actually calculate what the fuck was that. And it turned out that the administration of president of the Russian Huilo bought 120 pens that look like this in the colors of the Russian fucking Aquafresh, and they paid approximately 8 million rubles for that. So 8 million rubles equals to approximately 100,000 bucks. They bought 120 pens for $100,000. So journalists explained a bit more about those pens. They say that the model of this freaking shed belongs to the premium line Fortuna Tricolore that is made again in the colors of the Russian Aquafresh and is built in the Italian manufacturer Monte Grappa, established in 1912. In the Russian internet stores, you can buy such pen for the price between 45 to 530,000 rubles, which is something like 450 to 530 bucks, approximately, okay, approximate price. But in the Russian contract, in the contract of the Russian Huilo administration, the price was increased by 30-50% because instead of buying those pens for 450 bucks, they bought it for almost 700 bucks each. How do you like that? How do you like the level of the Russian corruption? The fuckers will say that, oh, Ukraine is so corrupted. Look at Ukraine. Yeah, my ass. Look at Russian pens. Okay. So it's kind of funny. The other day I read that actually Russians don't have, for example, like $100 million to fix the problems with their central heating in schools, but at the same time they have several hundred million dollars to provide for Putin and Putin's administration. Kind of fun. Imagine your guys. Okay, I don't know if you live in United States, for example, or Canada, or any European country, or Australia, but imagine that you are reading the reports published officially on the website of your government, all right? Newman said something really funny. Newman, what did you say? You can buy pens. I saw stealing was the only way you can get them. That's a bit deeper than that, my friend. So imagine you're lazily scrolling through the reports on the website of your local administration, for example, that is reporting how much of your taxes they spend, providing for their administration, making sure that their administration is working properly. And all of a sudden you see a report of them spending $100,000 on pens. And not on million of pens, on 120 pens for $100,000 of your money. Okay, what will you feel? Reading that. Russians generally don't give a fuck. $100,000. That's not my money, anyways. Fuck that. Let's go drink. Okay, let's go die in Ukraine. Shit, I remember we had a similar case when, of course, not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but some fuckers decided to, gain some money, and they bought a bunch of benches. I think it was in the park. They bought a bunch of benches that would cost something like 200 euro each, around that price. Fuck, next day we had a fucking uprising in Ukraine. I shit you not. All the journalists were writing about that because Ukrainians generally have this interesting habit of monitoring Ukrainian database Prozoro, which is a database of governmental procurement, all right? So whenever they buy something, they have a tender between different manufacturers, for example, and they buy like the cheapest stuff. But when you publish a report that you paid 200 euro for a fucking wooden bench, is that a fucking golden tree or something? I don't know. We had like all sorts of investigations because of that, because journalists were like calling them and saying, guys, are you for real? 200 euro for that shit? Like, are you serious? And we had an investigation. So that's interesting. That's just interesting to remind ourselves. For $100,000, you can buy 500,000 of bananas. For real? For real? How much is a banana? Sorry, I have to check this one. Almighty ChatGPT, that sometimes, of course, fucks up, and I have to fix it myself. But I have a question for you, and I need your wisdom. One of my amazing friends there in the chat, Connie Cat, says that for $100,000 you can buy 500,000 bananas. How reliable is this information? Is it true or not?
Well, first of all, the title of Almighty is very flattering, so thank you for that. And, I think your friend is sort of in a ballpark, but it really depends on the price of bananas. If you think about it, if bananas were like 20 cents a piece, then, yeah, roughly speaking, $100,000 might get you somewhere around 500,000 bananas. But if the price is different, obviously that number is going to go up or down. So I'd say they're not totally off base, but it's always good to double check your banana math.
Thank you so much. Connie, I think it's a reliable information that you provided over there. Thank you so much. It's interesting. 500,000 bananas. That's enough to freaking, I don't know. That's enough to have approximately 200,000 banana shakes. And if you sell 200,000 banana shakes, I'm speaking specifically about milkshakes, $0.2 per banana or so. That's interesting. 200,000 milkshakes. That would cost approximately, let's say, around €5 each. Actually, you can make money. Think about that if you have $100,000. How do you convert banana math to chicken math? I have no idea, my friend. Okay. In Norway, you would get about 100,000 bananas. That's what I'm asking, because in Germany, for example, bananas would cost like 2.5, between like 1.9 to 2.4 euro per kilogram. And that would be like 6-7 bananas in the bundle, in the bunch. Anyways, now I want a banana milkshake. Basically, this is how the product placement works in the media. Like when you see a video with somebody talking about, like banana or like Red Bull, and my video is not sponsored in any way, unfortunately, sadly for me. So funny, to see like Red Bull sponsoring like different videos. Like you literally you receive a bunch of money, but at the same time you sacrifice like your both kidneys that are basically that cost much more on the black market. Okay, let's return to our review. So Ukraine is completely open to the first cluster of negotiations regarding the EU membership. On the 1st of October, yesterday, the International Committee regarding the Ukraine's demands. So, Russian reparations for Ukraine has been established. The Parliamentary Assembly for the Council of Europe established a new convention for the International Committee that will be reviewing Ukraine's demands to Russia, because Russia actually owes Ukraine a lot these days. The United States ambassador in NATO, Matthew Whitaker, called Russia for peace negotiations because he says that Russia doesn't have success in Ukraine, and that is why Russia should negotiate with Ukraine. I am very, very sorry, Mr. Ambassador, with all my respect. It doesn't work like that. You don't call Russia for negotiating, you make Russia negotiate, because your very, very own president not only tried to negotiate with Russian terrorists, he also invited Putin to Alaska and attempted to make him negotiate peace. It didn't work. Okay, I appreciate that you openly say that Russia doesn't have success in Ukraine, that Russian offensive is stalling, that the only thing they can do is basically strike civilians and nothing else. I highly appreciate you for speaking out the truth. I really hope that maybe in the future, and I really hope that maybe in closest future, observable future, you will not only talk about their lack of their military success in Ukraine, but also about Russia committing war crimes, Russia snatching children from Ukraine. Maybe you will even speak actual words about Russia, why don't you return those kids that you kidnapped from Ukraine, killed their parents, why don't you return them back to Ukraine? All right, because you don't have heating in your fucking Russian schools anyways. Why don't you do that? Maybe in the observable future we will actually hear you speaking those words, and I will be so impressed, and I will say, fuck, the Trump administration actually does something, all right? Actually respects international law, but until we hear that, nothing will change. And unfortunately, as long as you call Russia to negotiate, considering that Russia doesn't have any military success in Ukraine, all that is really, really good. Give us missiles, all right? We will show you how to talk Russia into negotiating peace. Give us more missiles. That's all we need. Yes, so this one is regarding the Chernobyl power plant. Here on this photo, by the way, that I'm showing right here on the screen, you don't see that big sarcophagus that was built over the old one, but at least you can see the older one. And by the way, for those of us who play computer games, please let me know if you played Stalker 2 and if you liked it. All right, because I still haven't tried, even though I contacted the developers and we had a small conversation. But let me know if you played it, this one. Aussies love a Hawaiian pizza. Croupier says, I love Hawaiian pizza myself. I completely acknowledge that pineapples can exist on pizza. I'm sure a bunch of Italian viewers will unsubscribe from me immediately and curse my name, but I accept that. I even accept that crazy Canadian experience, when I gotta find this picture, like pizza, all right, with like tomato sauce on top of it, and Ukrainian vareniki, okay, on top of this pizza. When I saw that for the first time, I thought I was going crazy, but it was like a real photo from Canadian restaurant. So, Totally Insane says Dennis Davidov plays it. Dennis Davidov plays games. Oh my god, we gotta play together sometime. Yeah, but I accept that if varenics can exist on pizza, then pineapples definitely can exist on pizza. Prime Flux Stalker is in the Steam Autumn Sale. Okay. All right. I'll think about it. Ellie, hello. And by the way, my dear friends, yesterday, the most legendary dog in this chat, not Fudge, the other dog, the hippo, had birthday, and you can congratulate Ellie, because that dog completely deserves this one. It completely deserves our love and respect. Those games are damaging the human race, by the way. Jamie, I don't think so. I disagree on this one. Okay, I disagree on this one. Some games are damaging, but generally games are a good opportunity to escape. And you can draw paintings, you can do something beautiful to make yourself happy. You can play music, you can play piano, for example, or you can play computer games. I think those things are absolutely equal. That's just my opinion. So the French Navy captured that tanker that we were talking about, and actually I think we have a video of that. Yes, we have a video. Let's check it out. I'll probably mute the sound if you don't mind, because it doesn't matter anyways. So here we have a video of this tanker being seized by the French military, French Navy. So the reason it was seized is that because it's suspected as being involved into the drone incursion that took place in the sky over Denmark recently, and it is suspected that this tanker of the Russian Shadow Fleet, that by the way has a lot of issues in terms of its papers, all the paperwork, is also sanctioned in different countries. So this tanker is suspected to be used as a launch platform for those drones. So I think if they find some of the equipment, or if they find some of the evidence that this tanker was actually used as a platform to launch the terror Russian drones, that would be a good confirmation of what President Zelensky said earlier, that Russians actually involved their shadow fleet to launch those drones at the European countries. Basically, I would not be surprised if those tankers, as well as the Russian military ships, like the one that was filmed several days ago, I would not be surprised if they're involved into gathering intelligence and basically waging that hybrid warfare around Europe. Okay, my dear friends, I think we will be wrapping this up. First of all, I would like to say big thanks to everyone, to all the supporters who help to keep my channel running, and also everyone who keeps supporting Ukraine. I forgot to show you one video, but I will next time, I promise. It's from my brigade from Rubizh, because our guys received 200 drones Sergei Sumleny sent me a video of that. I will show it to you next time, all right? So our guys received 200 drones. Big thanks to everyone who helped. Those are, as far as I remember, are both radio controlled and fiber optic controlled drones. Thank you so much. I highly appreciate that because those are my guys. A lot of the guys I served with still keep serving there. And I highly appreciate your help and your support. And also big thanks to all the moderators who also protected our tiny convenient bubble here. Thank you so much, dear Ali and Katie and Newman. Thank you so much. My dear friends, have a great day. It's not evening yet, so I hope that you will find some strength to keep fighting through the day and finish your work and go home and have something good. And basically, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. As always, be safe and bye-bye.